Millionaire Cowboy finds freezing nurse at train station. Their love story made history. It was the winter of 1887, and a blizzard ripped through Wyoming Territory, claiming lives and leaving broken hearts in its wake. At the train station in Cheyenne, a young woman sat alone on a wooden bench. Her breath billowed out in white clouds against the bitter cold. She clutched a small leather bag containing everything she owned: $3, a faded photograph, and a heart as cold as the night itself. But what happened next would become a legendary love story, changing two lives forever and making history in the untamed American West. The wind sliced through Cheyenne like a knife that December night. Elizabeth Libby Montgomery pulled her thin shawl tighter, but it did little good. Her fingers had gone numb hours ago, and her lips were turning blue. The last train had left 3 hours prior, and the next wasn't due until morning, if the storm didn't block the tracks. Back in Philadelphia, Libby had been a nurse at a charity hospital, where she learned to tend wounds and comfort the dying. But when a doctor tried to force himself on her and she fought back, breaking his nose with a bedpan, no one believed her. The hospital fired her, and the word spread. With no respectable hospital willing to hire her, she spent her last bit of money on a train ticket west, hoping to find work in a mining town. But her money ran out in Cheyenne. Now, she sat on this hard bench, wondering if she would freeze to death before dawn. Her small leather medical bag, her only true possession, sat beside her. The sound of horse hooves on the frozen ground made her look up. Through the swirling snow, she saw a large figure on horseback approaching. The man wore a heavy coat and a wide-brimmed hat. As he drew closer, she could see his magnificent black stallion. He dismounted and walked toward the station, his expensive leather boots and confident stride hinting at a man of means. "Evening, miss," he said, touching the brim of his hat as he entered. "Mighty cold night to be sitting out here alone." His voice was deep and warm, with a slight Texas drawl. Libby tried to speak, but her teeth chattered too hard. She could only nod. He studied her with concerned eyes. He was about 30, with dark hair, a mustache, and a face weathered from the sun. Despite the harsh weather, he was clean-shaven, and his eyes were kind. "Name's Jack Thornton," he said, pulling off his gloves. "I own the Double T Ranch about 20 miles north of here. I was heading home when I saw you." He noticed her medical bag. "Ah, you a doctor, miss?" "A nice," Libby managed to say. "Elizabeth Montgomery from Philadelphia." Jack's eyes widened. A trained nurse was rarer than gold in this territory. "Miss Montgomery, you're going to freeze to death if you stay here much longer," he said, his voice filled with concern. "The storm's getting worse, and this station isn't heated. Please, let me take you somewhere warm." Libby looked at him with a mix of hope and weariness. She was desperate, and something about Jack Thornton seemed different from the men she'd known. I don't have money for a hotel," she whispered. "That's not your concern," Jack said firmly. "Getting you warm and fed is what matters. We'll sort out the rest later." He shrugged out of his heavy coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The warmth, still holding his body heat, made her gasp with relief. The coat smelled of leather, horses, and pine soap. "Can you walk?" Libby tried to stand, but her legs were too stiff. Without hesitation, Jack scooped her up, medical bag and all. She was as light as a feather and trembling like a leaf. "The hotel's just across the street," he said, carrying her toward the door. "We'll get you warmed up and then you can tell me what brings a trained nurse to Wyoming in the middle of winter." As they stepped into the storm, Libby was pressed against Jack's chest, his strong arms holding her securely. For the first time in months, she felt safe. She didn't know this man or his intentions, but she trusted him. Maybe it was her desperate situation, or maybe it was the kindness she saw in his eyes. The Cattleman's Hotel was the finest in Cheyenne, and every head in the lobby turned when Jack Thornton walked in carrying a woman. "Mr. Thornton, sir, what happened?" asked the desk clerk, Perkins. "Found this lady at the train station, near frozen to death," Jack said. "I need your best room." Send up hot food, coffee, and plenty of blankets. Also, get Doc Williams if he's in town. Right away, sir, Paquin said, grabbing a key. Room 12, second floor. Libby was aware of the whispers as Jack carried her, but she was too exhausted to care. The warmth of the building made her fingers and toes tingle with painful relief. Jack carried her into a spacious room with a fireplace and set her gently on a chair by the fire. He immediately began building up the flames. The hotel will send up some women's clothes, he said, not looking at her. Yours are damp. We need to get you warm and dry. A knock announced the arrival of hot coffee, soup, and blankets. Jack tipped the boy generously, then poured Libby a cup. Drink this slowly, he said. Too much heat too fast can be dangerous. Libby sipped the coffee, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. You seem to know something about medicine yourself, she observed. Jack smiled. You learn a few things running a ranch. But I'm no trained nurse. What brought you out west, if you don't mind my asking? Libby studied his face. He had honest eyes. I worked in a hospital in Philadelphia, she said carefully. There was a doctor who wouldn't take no for an answer. When I defended myself, I was dismissed. No hospital back east would hire me after that. Jack's jaw tightened. A man forced himself on you. He tried to, Libby said. I broke his nose with a bedpan. Jack's mouth twitched with a hint of a smile. Good for you. I hope it hurt. It did, Libby said, and for the first time in months, she almost smiled too. But it cost me my career. I thought maybe in the West, my past wouldn't matter so much. It doesn't, Jack said firmly. Out here, we judge people by what they do, not by the lies told about them. A trained nurse is worth her weight in gold in this territory. Another knock interrupted them, and a maid entered with an armload of clothes. Mrs. Patterson donated them, she said. She said any woman caught in this storm deserves all the help we can give. Thank Mrs. Patterson for her kindness, Jack said, standing. I'll wait downstairs while Miss Montgomery changes. Mr. Thornton, Libby called as he reached the door. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Jack paused, his hand on the doorknob. Maybe because I know what it's like to be alone in the world, he said quietly. And maybe because I've been praying for someone like you to come along, a healer. My ranch hands get hurt regular, and I've lost good men because there was no one to tend to them. But more than that, he turned to face her fully, I've been looking for someone special. Someone with strength and courage, someone who'd break a man's nose rather than let him take. With that, he left the room. Libby sat by the fire, staring at the closed door. She had expected many things out west, but not to meet a man like Jackson Thornton. Rich enough to own his own ranch, kind enough to help a stranger, and respectful enough to leave her alone. She looked at the clothes the maid had brought, a simple but well-made blue wool dress. As she changed, she felt a spark of hope. For the first time since leaving Philadelphia, she was looking forward to what tomorrow would bring. Libby woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sounds of the street below. The storm had passed, leaving a world of pristine white snow. She'd slept better than she had in weeks, warm and safe. A soft knock at the door made her sit up. Miss Montgomery, it's Jack Thornton. Just a moment, she called, quickly braiding her hair and smoothing the borrowed dress. When she opened the door, Jack stood in the hall with a breakfast tray. Morning, he said with a smile that made her heart skip. Thought you might be hungry. How are you feeling? Much better, thank you, she said, letting him in. Mr. Thornton, I don't know how to repay your kindness. Call me Jack, he corrected, setting the tray on a table. And you don't owe me anything, though I was hoping we could talk about your plans. As Libby ate a hearty breakfast of eggs, bacon, and biscuits, she admitted, I don't have many plans. I was hoping to find work in a mining camp, but I'm not sure how to get there. Jack leaned back in his chair. Mining camps are rough places for a woman alone. Dangerous, too, I can take care of myself, Libby said with quiet determination. I'm sure you can, Jack agreed. But there might be another option. My ranch covers 50,000 acres and I employ about 60 men year-round. That number goes up to nearly 100 during roundup season. These men work hard and get hurt regularly. Broken bones, cuts, burns, snake bites, you name it. Libby set down her coffee cup, intrigued. You're offering me work? I'm offering you a position as the rancher's nurse, Jack said. Good pay, comfortable quarters, and all the medical supplies you need. You'd have your own cabin near the main house, and Cookie, our cook, would make sure you're well fed. It sounded too good to be true. What would you expect in return? Jack's expression grew serious. Honest work for honest pay. Tend to the men when they are hurt, help with difficult births among the livestock, and maybe teach the hands some basic first aid. Nothing more than that. And you'd expect nothing personal. Understanding dawned in Jack's eyes. Libby, I'm not the kind of man to take advantage of a woman in a desperate situation. If something personal were to develop between us, it would be because we both wanted it, not because you felt obligated. Libby looked for any sign of deception, but his eyes were clear and honest. How far is your ranch? She asked. 20 miles north, Jack replied. It's called the Double T. We raise cattle and horses, some of the finest in Wyoming. The work is hard, but the men who ride for me are good people. You said you've been looking for a healer. Haven't you tried to hire a doctor? Jack laughed without humor. I've tried. Most doctors want to practice in towns where they can build a profitable practice. Ranch work isn't profitable enough for most of them. But you'd hire a woman. I'd hire anyone with the skills and courage to do the job, Jack said firmly. Out here, we care more about what a person can do than whether they wear pants or dress. Libby considered the offer. It was better than anything she had hoped for, but it seemed too perfect. What aren't you telling me? She asked. Jack smiled. Smart as well as skilled. All right, here's the truth of it. The Double T is a working ranch, not a fancy estate. The winters are hard, the summers are hot, and we're 20 miles from the nearest town. You'd be the only woman on the ranch most of the time, besides Cookie's wife, Martha. It can be lonely. I've been lonely in cities full of people, Libby said quietly. At least ranch loneliness would be honest. There's something else, Jack continued. My family has money. My father made a fortune in shipping. Some people might say you're trying to catch yourself a wealthy husband. Libby's chin came up defiantly. Let them say what they want. I know my own heart and intentions. I believe you do, Jack said softly. But I wanted you to know what you might be walking into. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Finally, Libby spoke. When would you want me to start? Jack's face lit up with a smile. Does that mean you'll take the position? It means I'll try it, Libby said carefully. If it doesn't work out for either of us, I'll move on with no hard feelings. Fair enough, Jack said, standing and extending his hand. Welcome to the Double T, Nurse Montgomery. As Libby shook his hand, she felt a spark of electricity pass between them. From the look in Jack's eyes, he felt it too. This job might be more complicated than she'd thought, but for the first time in months, she was looking forward to the future. The ride to the ranch took 3 hours. Jack had bought her a warm coat, riding boots, and other necessities in Cheyenne, refusing to take no for an answer. Consider it an advance on your salary, he'd said with a familiar grin. As they rode side by side, Libby felt a sense of freedom she'd never known. The landscape was vast and beautiful, with snow-capped mountains and an endless sky. Jack pointed out landmarks, and finally, they reached the boundary of the Double T. There she is, Jack said proudly as they crested a hill. Libby gasped at the sight below. The ranch sprawled across the valley like a small town. The main house was large, built of logs and stone. Nearby stood the bunkhouse, stables, corrals, and a blacksmith shop. Smoke rose from several chimneys, and she could see men working despite the cold. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "Wait until spring," Jack replied. "When the grass is green and the wildflowers are blooming, there's no prettier sight in all of Wyoming." As they rode into the ranch yard, men emerged from the buildings. Word of Jack's mission had clearly spread. "Boys," Jack called out as he dismounted, "I want you to meet Miss Elizabeth Montgomery. She's our new nurse." A cheer went up from the assembled men, and Libby's cheeks grew warm. A grizzled cowboy with gray whiskers stepped forward. "Name's Tom Bradley, miss. I'm the foreman. Can't tell you how glad we are to have someone with medical training on the ranch." "Thank you, Mr. Bradley," Libby said, as Jack helped her down from her horse. "You can be of help," said another man with a bandaged hand. "I cut myself on some barbed wire yesterday, and it's been paining me something fierce." "I'll take a look at it after I get settled," Libby promised. Jack led her toward a small but well-built cabin about 50 yards from the main house. "This will be your home," he said, opening the door. The cabin was simple yet comfortable, with a main room, a small bedroom, and a kitchen with a wood stove. A fire was already lit in the fireplace. "Cookie's wife, Martha, stocked the kitchen," Jack explained, "and I had some of the boys bring over furniture and linens. If you need anything else, just let me know." Libby walked around, touching the simple wooden furniture. The cabin was perfect. "There's one more thing," Jack said, leading her to a room she hadn't noticed. "I thought you might need this." He opened the door to reveal a fully equipped medical office. It had an examination table, cabinets filled with supplies, surgical instruments, and medicines. It was better equipped than some hospitals she'd worked in back east. "Jack," she breathed, overwhelmed. "This must have cost a fortune." "A good nurse is worth a fortune," he said simply. "Besides, I ordered most of this months ago, hoping I'd eventually find someone to use it." Tears pricked Libby's eyes. After months of rejection, this kindness was almost too much to bear. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Jack said with a smile. "Wait until you've seen what some of these cowboys can do to themselves. You'll earn every penny of your salary." As if on cue, there was a knock. Tom Bradley entered, supporting a young cowboy hopping on one foot. "Sorry to bother you, miss, but Billy here just got stepped on by his horse," Tom said. "Bring him into the medical room," Libby said, immediately shifting into professional mode. "Let's get that boot off and see what we're dealing with." As she examined Billy's bruised but not broken foot, she was aware of Jack watching from the doorway. After she finished bandaging the foot, she looked up and found him smiling. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," he said. "Just thinking that this might work out even better than I hoped." That evening, after treating 3 more minor injuries, Libby sat in her new cabin, trying to process everything. 2 days ago, she was freezing and penniless. Now, she had a job, a home, and the respect of the men she worked with. And then there was Jack Thornton. He was nothing like the men she had known back east. He was strong but gentle, wealthy yet unpretentious, and he treated her as an equal. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. When she opened the door, Jack stood there with a steaming cup. "Thought you might like some hot chocolate before bed," he said. "Martha makes the best in Wyoming Territory." "That's very thoughtful," Libby said, accepting the cup. "Would you like to come in?" Jack hesitated. "I don't want to compromise your reputation." "I think my reputation can survive a brief conversation with my employer," Libby said with a smile. "Besides, who's going to see us way out here?" Jack entered and sat by the fireplace. The hot chocolate was delicious. "How are you settling in?" he asked. "Better than I dared hope," she admitted. "The men have been very respectful. The cabin is perfect, and that medical room is better equipped than some city hospitals." "Good," Jack said. He fell silent, staring into the fire. "What is it?" Libby asked, sensing something was troubling him. I want to be honest with you about something, he said. When I found you at that train station, it wasn't entirely by chance. Libby set down her cup, suddenly wary. What do you mean? I had been in town on business, yes, he said. But I was also making inquiries about finding a nurse or doctor for the ranch. The hotel clerk mentioned that a woman with medical training had been asking about work earlier that day. I went to the station hoping to find you. So you knew who I was? I knew a trained nurse was supposed to be on the evening train from the east, Jack said. I didn't know your name or your circumstances until I found you there. Why didn't you tell me earlier? She asked. Because I wanted you to take the job based on its merits, not because you felt obligated to the man who rescued you. Libby found herself respecting him even more for his honesty. Is there anything else I should know? Jack met her eyes directly. Just this, I'm attracted to you, Libby. I have been since the moment I saw you sitting in that station. But your job here is secure regardless of your personal feelings toward me. I won't pressure you or make your position here dependent on anything other than your professional skills. Libby's heart skipped a beat. The attraction was mutual, but she appreciated his straightforwardness. Thank you for being honest, she said softly. And for the record, the attraction isn't one-sided. They looked at each other across the firelight, both aware that something significant was beginning. Well, Jack said, standing. I should let you get some rest. Tomorrow, Cookie wants to show you around the kitchen gardens, and Martha's eager to give you a full tour of the ranch. Jack, Libby called as he reached the door. Thank you for everything. I haven't felt this hopeful about the future in a very long time. Neither have I, he said quietly, and then he was gone. Spring came early to Wyoming Territory, and with it, Libby settled into her new life at the Double T Ranch. She treated everything from broken bones to snake bites, delivered foals and calves, and even helped Martha in the garden. The cowboys respected her and often sought her advice, but it was her growing relationship with Jack that occupied most of her thoughts. He was careful to maintain professional boundaries during the day, but their evening conversations on her cabin porch had become a cherished routine. One evening in late April, as they watched the sunset, Jack brought up a subject that had been weighing on him. Libby, there's something I need to tell you about my past, he said, his voice unusually serious. What is it? She asked. I was married before, Jack said quietly. Her name was Rebecca. We were childhood sweethearts. Libby felt a stab of jealousy, followed immediately by guilt. What happened to her? She asked gently. Fever took her 3 years ago, Jack said, pain in his voice. When she died, I thought my chance at happiness died with her. I'm sorry, Libby said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. She was very special, Jack agreed. But she was also nothing like you. Rebecca was gentle and delicate, content to stay home. You're strong, independent, willing to face challenges. I love that about you. Libby's heart stopped. Jack, I know it's too soon, he said quickly. I know we work together and that complicates things, but I can't pretend anymore that my feelings for you are just professional respect. Mine aren't either, Libby admitted. But you're right. It is complicated. What would the men think? What would people in town say? I don't care what they say, Jack said firmly. But I care what you think, what you want. Before Libby could answer, Tom Bradley came running up to the cabin, his face pale. Boss, Miss Libby, there's been an accident. Lightning spooked the horses and young Danny got trampled. His hurt bad. Libby was on her feet instantly. Where's he? She asked, her personal feelings pushed aside by professional duty. Bunkhouse, Tom replied. Cookie and some of the boys carried him there. Libby ran to the medical room to grab her supplies while Jack saddled horses to ride for the doctor in Cheyenne. But when she reached the bunkhouse and saw Danny's injuries, a crushed chest and labored breathing, she knew there wasn't time to wait. Internal bleeding was obvious. He'll be dead before the doctor gets here, Libby said firmly. I've done this surgery before. We can save him, but we have to act now. For the next 3 hours, Libby worked over Danny's broken body, repairing internal damage and setting bones. The cowboys watched in silent awe as she performed what seemed like a miracle. When she finally stepped back, exhausted but triumphant, Danny's breathing was steady, and his color had improved. "He'll live," she announced, and the bunkhouse erupted in cheers. Jack, who had returned with the doctor an hour earlier, watched from the doorway with undisguised admiration. The doctor examined Danny and declared Libby's work was as fine as any surgeon in Denver could have done. Later that night, Libby and Jack finally had a chance to talk. "What you did tonight," Jack said as they sat on her porch in the moonlight, "it was incredible. You saved that boy's life." "It's what any trained nurse would have done," Libby said modestly. "No," Jack said firmly. "It's what you did, and it's why I love you." There it was, out in the open. Libby looked at this man who had rescued her, given her a home, and now looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "I love you too," she said simply. Jack leaned over and kissed her, gentle and sweet under the star-filled Wyoming sky. "Marry me, Libby," he said. "I know it's fast, but I can't imagine my life without you now." "Jack," she began, but he held up a hand. "You don't have to answer tonight," he said. "Just promise me you'll think about it." "I will," she promised, though in her heart she already knew the answer. Word of Jack's proposal spread through the ranch faster than wildfire. To Libby's surprise, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. The cowboys had come to love and respect her, and they could see how happy she made their boss. Even Tom Bradley gave the match his wholehearted approval. "Never seen the boss smile so much," he told Libby. "You're good for him, miss. Good for all of us." The wedding was planned for the first Saturday in June. It became the social event of the season, with cowboys from neighboring ranches, townsfolk from Cheyenne, and even some of Jack's business associates from Denver coming to witness the union. Libby wore an ivory silk dress Jack had specially ordered, with wildflowers woven into her hair by Martha. She looked radiant as she walked down the makeshift aisle, with Tom proudly escorting her. Jack waited at the altar on the main house porch, dressed in his finest black suit. When their eyes met, his nervousness disappeared, replaced by a smile of pure joy. The circuit preacher's words about love and commitment seemed especially meaningful. "I do," Jack said firmly when asked to take Libby as his wife. "I do," Libby replied, her voice strong and sure. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Jack's kiss was passionate enough to draw cheers and whistles. Libby blushed but didn't pull away. Secure in their love, the celebration that followed was legendary. The most meaningful moment came when Danny, still recovering, stood to make a toast. "To Mrs. Thornton," he said, raising his glass of lemonade. "The woman who saved my life and made our boss the happiest man in Wyoming. May your love story inspire generations to come." The crowd erupted in agreement, and Libby found herself crying happy tears as Jack squeezed her hand. As the evening wound down, Jack and Libby found themselves alone on the porch of the main house. "How does it feel to be a married woman?" Jack asked, taking her hands in his. "It feels like coming home," Libby replied. "Like everything that happened before was just preparing me for this moment." Jack pulled her close. "I have something for you," he said, pulling out a small velvet box. Inside was a beautiful gold locket. "Jack, it's beautiful," Libby breathed as he fastened it around her neck. "Open it," he urged. Inside was a tiny photograph of them taken earlier that day. Engraved on the opposite side were the words, "Forever and always, JT." "Now you'll always have me close to your heart," Jack said softly. "I already do," Libby whispered and kissed him under the stars. The first year of marriage brought both joys and challenges. Libby continued her work as the ranch nurse, but now she also helped Jack with the business side of the operation. Her medical skills became legendary. She successfully treated a cholera outbreak, delivered twins during a blizzard, and even removed a bullet from a wounded sheriff. Jack valued her opinions and never made important decisions without consulting her. Their happiness was tested when Libby's past came back to haunt them. In the spring of 1889, Dr. Harrison, the man who had tried to assault her in Philadelphia, arrived in Cheyenne, claiming to investigate medical malpractice. "He's come to cause trouble," Libby told Jack, reading the telegram that warned them of his arrival. "Let him come," Jack said grimly. "He'll find that things are different out here." Harrison arrived at the ranch 3 days later, accompanied by a territorial marshal. He was a thin, pale man with a permanent sneer. "Mrs. Thornton," he said with mock politeness. "Or should I say, Miss Montgomery, I am here to investigate reports of illegal medical practice." "My wife is a trained nurse," Jack said, stepping in front of Libby. "She has certificates proving her education and experience." "Certificates that are meaningless if she's been dismissed from her position for moral turpitude," Harrison replied smoothly. "Did you tell your husband about your behavior back in Philadelphia?" "I told him about a coward who tried to force himself on me and got his nose broken for his trouble," Libby said, her voice steady. That was as far as he got before Jack's fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling. The marshal reached for his gun but was faced with 30 angry cowboys who had appeared from nowhere. The hearing was held in Cheyenne's courthouse 3 days later, and it seemed like half the territory showed up to support Libby. Patient after patient testified about her skill and compassion. The doctor from Cheyenne spoke eloquently about her surgical abilities, and even the territorial governor sent a letter praising her contributions. Harrison's accusations fell apart under scrutiny. The judge declared Libby's nursing certificate officially recognized by the territorial government and authorized her to practice medicine throughout Wyoming. "As for you, Dr. Harrison," the judge said, "I suggest you leave our territory immediately." The courtroom erupted in cheers, and Libby found herself swept up in Jack's arms. "It's over," he whispered. "He can't hurt you anymore." "We did it together," Libby replied, looking into his eyes. "We can face anything together." By 1892, 5 years after their marriage, Jack and Libby Thornton had become one of the most influential couples in Wyoming. The Double T Ranch had expanded, and their cattle were renowned. But it was their contributions to the community that truly set them apart. Libby had established the first real hospital in the territory and started a nursing school. Jack had become a political force, advocating for statehood and building the town of Thornton, complete with schools and churches. Their greatest joy came from their 3 children, twin boys, Thomas and Jackson Jr., and a daughter, Rebecca. "She's going to be a healer like her mother," Jack said one evening as they watched their daughter sleep. "Or a rancher like her father," Libby replied with a smile. "Maybe both," Jack said, pulling his wife into his arms. "In this family, we believe in unlimited possibilities." As they stood together, Libby reflected on their journey. "Do you ever regret it?" Jack asked, as if reading her thoughts. "Leaving Philadelphia, coming west, taking a chance on a rough cowboy?" "Never," Libby said firmly. "That night you found me was the luckiest night of my life. Everything that happened before was just preparing me to be your wife." "I love you, Libby Thornton," Jack said, "more than I ever thought possible." "And I love you, Jackson Thornton," she replied, "forever and always." Years later, historians wrote about the story of Jack and Libby Thornton. Their love became a legend, told and retold, inspiring generations to believe in the power of love to overcome any obstacle. In a museum in Cheyenne, visitors can still see Libby's medical bag, the one she carried that cold night in 1887. Next to it is Jack's wedding ring and their marriage certificate. But the real monument to their love isn't in any museum. It's in the hundreds of couples who found inspiration in their story. In the graveyard on a hill overlooking the Double T Ranch, 2 headstones stand side by side. Jack died in 1923, and Libby followed him just 3 months later. Their shared headstone reads simply, "Forever and always," a love that made history.